Representative, and thank you, Charlie. With no other questions, I'll now invite up Brad Williams from the Detroit Regional Chamber.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and I want to start by thanking you for letting me go after Charlie, because that allows me to play the role of good cop. I hope I'm successful at that as well today. But I do share many of his concerns. My name is Brad Williams, and I'm the Vice President of Government Relations for the Detroit Regional Chamber. The Detroit Regional Chamber believes in transforming Detroit and the region through long-term and short-term economic growth. We take our mission seriously and believe that when we're successful, it not only improves the business climate for our members, but improves the lives of their current and future employees. The Chamber will continue to meet its mission by building on our 4 pillars, which are economic development, regional collaboration, education reform, and value to Chamber members. The prospect of inconsistent labor standards impacts all 4 of these pillars. And while our leadership has a natural aversion to mandates on local units of government, I'm concerned about the negative impacts of mandated community benefits agreement and local labor standards would have on the city of Detroit in particular, and additionally in particular within its neighborhoods. My boss, Chamber CEO Sandy Barua, who many of you know, has served many years in Washington under both President George H.W. Bush and President George W. Bush as Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Small Business Administrator. In that role, he found that local decisions were frequently the best made decisions. But, however, we believe that consistent application of labor standards and potential damage by a community benefits ordinance in the city of Detroit or other cities tips the balance and requires the Chamber's support of House Bill 5977. The Chamber is and has been engaged with Detroit City Council, which is currently discussing a proposed ordinance that would require a community benefits agreement for certain city-supported economic development projects. From the beginning, the Chamber supported the intent of the proposed ordinance. Far too many Detroiters are currently seeking employment, and the Chamber is actively engaged in strategies that will increase employment opportunities for Detroiters and those throughout our region. While I'm confident in the leadership provided by Mayor Duggan and believe that City Council will ultimately decide that this proposed ordinance would be damaging to the city's long-term economic health, the Chamber believes that a level playing field for communities across the state will lead to economic development that is based on overall business climate and not bureaucratic hurdles. As I mentioned, the Chamber does not believe the intent of proponents of higher labor standards and community benefits agreements we do believe that it's aligned with the broader goals that we share of economic growth. However, level playing field across municipal boundaries is the best way to achieve this goal. Frankly, while the city's comeback has been a topic of discussion nationwide, most of the new investments in the city thus far have been from friends and family, where either the desire of a civically minded executive or corporate history, the wise decision is made to invest in Detroit. We will know Detroit is really back when investors from Chicago and New York and London and Shanghai are investing in the city. Currently, the perception is that the barriers for these investors are too high to take the risk, and they don't have the passion for the city that drove Chamber member companies such as Quicken and Blue Cross into the city, to give just 2 examples. When making decisions on whether to expand or relocate businesses, businesses look at a host of issues, from the quality of the available workforce, transportation infrastructure, tax policy, quality of life, but primarily what they're looking for is certainty and consistency. For those with businesses in multiple jurisdictions, inconsistent labor standards can be exceedingly problematic. Further, required community benefits agreements create significant amounts of uncertainty by handing off the proper role of city government to protect the interests of all its citizens to a group of individuals whose interests, while not ill-intentioned, may not reflect the interests of the city as a whole. Stopping a new business in one neighborhood may be beneficial to residents in immediately surrounding areas, as well as currently existing businesses in that neighborhood, but it might be detrimental to the citizens in the rest of the city who are either seeking employment in that industry or seeking to utilize the services the business offers. That said, the Chamber is focused on creating high-paying jobs and a competitive workforce for the city of Detroit and the entire surrounding region. The Chamber supports several mechanisms to accomplish these same goals that do not require the intervention of City Hall. The Chamber believes that the best way to ensure the employment of Detroiters as well as workers throughout the region is to ensure that skills are developed to create one of the best workforces in the world. First of all, major projects are already underway, and there are many that are yet to come, and these will likely require more skilled trade labor than is currently available in Michigan. Any qualified worker who seeks to work on construction on one of these projects will almost certainly be able to do so. These are high-paying and family-sustaining jobs that do not require an ordinance to inflate wages, mandate hiring, or impose work rules. Further, the Chamber administers the Detroit Scholarship Fund program from the Michigan Educational Excellence Foundation, offering a last dollar scholarship to any Detroit student to attend community college, as well as the Detroit Compact, which requirements with the long-standing support and assistance from our state universities. So, for example, students wishing to work on construction of the NITC would be able to pursue a welding technology certificate available at Wayne County Community College under the MEAF, or a student wishing to work on re-engineering the Michigan Central Station to meet current safety codes could pursue a degree in engineering or architecture at Michigan State under the Detroit Compact. Additionally, the Chamber is a strong supporter of the Skilled Trades Training Fund and the Michigan Strategic Fund, which gives competitive grants to employers looking to increase their talent pipeline. These, along with other private sector and labor union apprenticeships, increase the qualified workforce and will provide opportunities for those seeking employment. Finally, this legislation does not in any way prevent developers from engaging surrounding businesses and residents in helping to develop a plan that engages and improves the community and provides a quality work environment for all employees. This is a sound business practice more often than not. I hear anecdotally from Chamber members who choose to locate in Detroit that it is not only an investment that makes business sense, but is also driven by a passion to be part of the city's renaissance. As Dan Gilbert often says, you can do well by doing good. Now that the mayor and council have resumed day-to-day operations of the city, every project requiring public investment and review by city council will require a public hearing, where residents of impacted neighborhoods will have the opportunity to petition their government, and community support, as you all know, is often a key driver in decisions made by local officials. Rather than a one-size-fits-all approach that could potentially have a harmful economic impact, the Chamber prefers a model where local governments can continue with thoughtful reviews of these projects on a case-by-case basis. The Detroit Regional Chamber is the leading voice for business in the Detroit region and a partner in the continuing reinvention of the city and state. Ask for your thoughtful consideration of this important issue. The Chamber is and will continue to be active in efforts to provide employment opportunities for all Michigan workers from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. I believe when we are successful in these efforts, our state's workforce is another tool that can continue our economic growth, and hope that you agree. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Brad. Representative Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brad, it's good to see you again. Thank you for your testimony. I was going to ask this question of Charlie Owens because he brought up the example of Indiana. But you know, I know we need to move the hearing along. We need to hear from a lot of different folks, so I didn't want to hold him up unduly. But I just want to bring up this issue. You know, the issue we have here, and you mentioned it, is what we want is a vibrant market that's creating good-paying jobs that are going to cause median wages. You know, that's what we want, right? Median household incomes to grow up, to go up. We all need to grow up, probably. So, you know, I'm just looking at some statistics from the Census Bureau here that show that, you know, nobody's getting this. Like the United States as a whole has seen, since wages peaked in the late 90s, we've seen a drop in the last 15 years in the median household income. In the United States overall, it's dropped 8.7%. Well, in Indiana, the median income for households has dropped 11.5%. So why would we want to be Indiana? Now, Michigan has done worse. We all know that. We all know why. It's got nothing to do with local regulations. It's got everything to do with the auto industry. But I just fail to see why we would want to emulate a state like Indiana, which is doing worse, significantly worse than the national average on median incomes. They're not solving the problem. So I think we need to look elsewhere. And, you know, looking at this data the states that have done better than the national average don't conform to any particular story. Some of them are states with a lot of mineral wealth, a lot of extractive, they got oil and gas and things like that. Then you have states like Pennsylvania. Their median income only dropped 5.7% in the last 15 years. I just challenge you and everybody else to look elsewhere, because I think a lot of the things the Chamber tries to champion, I champion too, and I think we work together. But focusing so much on constraining government's ability to take care of its people, I just don't see that as the way forward. That's not a question, Rick.
Thank you, Representative Townsend. I appreciate the comments and but I don't hear a question in that. So, Brad, thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh.
Okay, Representative Santana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so that I'm understanding this, as it relates to page 2 of the substitute bill, as I'm reading sections 13 through 26, specifically related to the community benefits agreement, what I think I understand is what this bill is trying to do is create uniformity as it relates to community benefits agreements around the state, correct?
Yeah, I don't have the substitute bill in front of me, Representative, so I can't speak to that specifically, but yes, I believe that is the case. That might be more properly asked of the sponsor.
Okay, here's where I have, I guess, my disagreement. As a person who spent 5 years working on the Detroit River International Crossing Study as a consultant for MDOT, as a person who's actually worked on the Detroit Intermodal Freight Terminal, which was a railroad terminal in the same general neighborhood, and as a person who actually knows what it is to go through a community benefit agreement process, the problem that I have, especially with this language, is what you're basically doing is telling the people in the neighborhood, sorry for your luck, you get no buy-in to this process whatsoever. And what it does is says to that family of 4 or 5 or 6 that are living in a 900 square foot home, we're going to come in, we're going to move you out, and you basically are screwed because you're not going to get a job, you're not going to get any benefit, and we're going to make all the rules around you so complicated that you're not going to have any say-so in the process. And I find this bill particularly egregious because, look, wherever these large transportation projects come in, there are always environmental issues that you have to take into consideration because they're always in very poor communities. And you see a $3 billion bridge coming through your neighborhood, and you're basically writing a law here that says the Detroit City Council and the mayor can enter into a community benefit agreement with the local community. I think that is highly unfair as a state practice, and this is something that at the local community should be debated. And why? Because in a neighborhood like Del Rey in Detroit, it is so very different than Alpena. It is so very different than Marquette. It is so very different than Grand Rapids. And what you're saying is that poor community is going to have the same rules for that community, even though the economics are completely different. And the environmental issues are completely different. So, having said all of that, I just can't see supporting something like this, and I don't know why anybody would, especially when we're looking at community benefit agreements as a way to engage local communities with potential developers in areas that are in dire need of redevelopment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Representative.
If I could respond quickly, Mr. Chair.
Brad,
yes. I'm sorry.
Isn't it true that this bill does not preclude community development agreements, broad community development agreements? It just narrowly focuses on wages, benefits, and the like. And so there's still a lot of latitude available for those kinds of agreements. Is that not true?
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. And one of the things that's, Representative Santana brought up the NITC, as did I in my testimony. One of the things that can still be required as part of this would be job training programs to take the folks in the neighborhood and get them the training required to participate in the project. This just simply speaks to employment mandates and as well as wages. Further, it speaks to ordinances. It does not say anywhere in the legislation that a local government can't take it into consideration when making decisions on individual projects. It just says that it cannot be a requirement.
Thank you, Brad.
Mr.
Thank you very
Chairman,
much.
Mr. Chairman, in response to that, it says it right here. Number 9, that this act is intended to provide uniformity throughout this state on the adoption of certain prohibitions or limitations on employers throughout the state. As used in this act, community benefit agreements means a contract required by ordinance, resolution, or policy by a governmental body within this state that requires contractors or developers to concurrently with the development of certain parcels or property within the governmental body within the state, hire certain employees, pay certain wages or benefits, engage certain subcontractors or local businesses for the provisions of goods and services, on and on and on. So when I read this, as a person who's worked on these types of things before, what you're basically saying here is, we're going to make a law that says, we don't got to engage local contractors. We don't have to look at the people in the neighborhood and hire them. What we're going to find is a rule, and what we're going to do is a rule that says we're going to work around you. And that's how I read this. And if there's a lawyer that can interpret this, then I'd be welcome to hear that.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.